So, okay, I'm just going to read this out loud. I find that I get very confused around how to practice humility and tolerance in certain situations when I feel that if I don't speak on something that's bothering me, that another person is doing, then they may keep doing it. However, I find that when I go to speak, conflicting feelings arise about if I should just let this other person's behavior or words pass over me and just tolerate. I have heard that suggested, I think, by Guru Maharaj in so many words. Also, I've heard similar sentiments as Guru Maharaj and Buddhists in Toltec psychology. But I also know that we have to be realistic with where we are internally and not force something which may backfire upon us later, like the passive person that has explosive rage. Sometimes, low. But I almost wish I was able to just pick one way of being and not have to think about what I should or shouldn't say or do. What is funny to me too is that in the realm of Western communication and psychology, we are told to be assertive and always state our feelings and boundaries and not to let others' bad behavior slip by. I actually feel really internally confused and conflicted on this point. Okay, well, a lot of things come up with this. And, you know, really, there's no one answer for this, you know, for these types of situations. It's all time, place, and circumstance. You know, and also we have a Kanipriya Didi here and Namapriya Didi here, just to also include them in our group. They're physically here. You know, one thing to consider is that, you know, do we want to have a relationship with this person? Like, is it worth our time to put energy into a relationship with this person? Because if we think this isn't someone who I think it's worth my time and energy to invest in a authentic relationship with, then better just, you know, avoid them, give them the attention or whatever it is that they want, and avoid them as far as possible, right? Like, so there's the beautiful example of Rupa and Sanatan, right? Where there's this Digvijay Pandit, this great scholar, who's traveling through India, trying to, you know, conquer scholars and assert his superiority as a Pandit. And he hears about Rupa and Sanatan, these great Vaishnava scholars in Vrindavan. And so he goes to Sanatan Goswami first. Oh, I am such and such Pandit, you know, will you debate with me? And Sanatan Goswami really is not interested, doesn't want to waste his time. You know, he doesn't care about establishing his ego. So he just says, you know, I don't really have time. You know, I'm very sorry. And so then whereas that Pandit, on the other hand, he's not really interested in an authentic exchange. He just wants to establish his own position. So he says, okay, then will you sign this paper to say that you've been defeated by me? You know? And Sanatan Goswami says, yes, where's the paper? No problem. And he signs. And then the scholar goes to Rupa Goswami. Oh, you know, I want to have some discussion with you. I'd like to have some debate. You know, I just defeated your guru, by the way, Sanatan. You know, and now will you sit and debate with me too? And Rupa Goswami says the same thing. Oh, you know, I'm a little busy now. You know, they're working on composing transcendental literature. You know, they have bigger fish to fry. You know, excuse my language. You know, they have better things to do with their time. So Rupa also, he humbly declines. And again, the Pandit, oh, will you sign my paper? Yes, no problem. He signs the paper, right? So it's a very beautiful example, which at least on a personal level, it helps me in many situations. You know, just give the person what they want. You know, they want some attention, they want some honor, respect. Just give it to them like a crying baby, pacify them, and send them on their way. The baby wants some sweet, give them the sweet and let them go on their way, you know, then you saved your time and energy. Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave one very nice analogy. He said that if somebody wants honor from you and they're not getting it, they will be like a they will be like a ghost that is haunting you. They'll be following behind you. And that's something we experience, right? Somebody wants some particular type of attention or respect from us. They feel that we've disrespected them. They won't let go of that, you know, and in different ways, they're going to be hassling us and disturbing us, whether in a gross or in a subtle way. You know? But if you let them feel like, oh no, it's all fine, you respect them, you appreciate them, and et cetera, then they'll be peaceful. They'll let you alone. They won't bother you, you know? So I apply that in cases where it's someone who I feel it's not really worth engaging with. I don't feel like it's really worth the effort and time of developing a serious relationship and having a genuine exchange with them. You know? But then there may be other cases where it's someone who we have a closer relationship with, and where if we don't say something, then it could jeopardize our relationship, you know, because sometimes we hold on to things, right? And then it may not come out, or like our bad feeling may not come out directly, but it will come out in some sideways way. You know, maybe we'll become passive aggressive, or, you know, things can start to get a little, like the undertone will start to get a little strange, and it can damage relationships, right? Because you don't want to say anything, but you're holding on to some type of grudge. So then that bad feeling will come out in different ways. And then the other person, you know, they'll be responding to that undertone in another way. And then it's like this back and forth thing where it's the negativity is feeding each other. And then it could just totally destroy the friendship, right? So sometimes it can be healthy and good and progressive to sit down and express how you feel. If you think it's someone who you really care about and it's worth investing your energy in, you know. And it is important, you know, not to do it when you're feeling the anger, right? You know, don't do it when you're feeling the frustration. You know, do it when you're in a calmer state, you know, and you can, you know, and you also have to assess, like, is it really necessary? You know, am I just being petty? You know, sometimes we can blow little things up. You know, we have to consider that, you know. Sometimes, you know, especially if you're like living in a shared space, or you're like in a workplace or a home, you know, sometimes very tiny things can you know, they just get blown up, you know, like men leaving the toilet seat up, you know, little things like that can just really build up, just make you want to explode, right? You know? My solution, just live with ladies, you know? But it's funny, I mean, I've experienced sometimes like how this little thing, it can really just start to annoy you, you know? Like every time I go, they leave the seat up, you know? And it can really start to grate on you, but it's really a very petty thing. It's a very tiny thing, you know? Or they always leave the door closed, or they leave it open, or whatever it is, right? These tiny little things, they can just start to build up. And then we need to sit back and, you know, go for a walk or something, like do something else, you know, get out of that headspace, get some perspective. This is not a big deal. You know, this is not a big deal. But then if it's something that we feel is important to resolve, you know, if someone is truly disturbing us and something significant, then we can say something, you know, for the sake of preserving a good relationship. You know, however, another thing to remember is this principle of wait and see. You know, that was something that our Gurudev would quote. Our Gurudev had that on his wall. wait and see. And the Bengali, maybe Chinmoy Prabhu or Govindandini can remember, it was a Sahasya na, I can't remember, but saying not the literal Bengali was something like not to act impulsively or something like that. But he had it up in English as that, like wait and see. And that expression gets quoted in many different contexts, but Gurudev explained once that primarily that idea is, that principle is for quarrel. You know, when there's some type of quarrel or some type of conflict, before we act on that, we respond, we should wait and see. You know, because one thing that, and Gurudev, you know, I've heard this from our Gurudev secretaries, and I'm sure I witnessed some occasions myself, but sometimes if devotees would write to him, he would get all kinds of letters, you know, Chinmoy Prabhu can testify to that, you know, and sometimes he would get letters from devotees complaining about others, you know, and different problems and disagreements. But sometimes what our Gurudev, oh, thank you, Sahasa Vidadi Tanakriyam, Govindandini has it here. That's the phrase that he had on his wall. And welcome, we have a few new friends with us today. Andriana is with us, Dandavat, and also Somya Shamprabhu's joined us, and also Chintamani Devi and Dana. Welcome to everyone, Dandavat. So he explained that primarily that is for, oh yeah, so sorry, going back to what I was saying, sometimes what our Gurudev would do, he would receive these complaints, right? Oh, so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is doing that, or can you do something? And our Gurudev would sometimes deal with this by simply not doing anything, you know, just not giving any, not like rushing to give a reply or a strategy, you know, not immediately. Oh, sorry, could you turn off your mic? Someone has the mic on. Well, thank you. You know, not rushing to give some advice, like how to deal with this, but just not giving any response. And then what would happen often is that it would just resolve itself. You know, there were so many different waves coming in the environment, different circumstances coming up, and often these things, they resolve themselves. You know, it may even be outside of our own decision-making process, you know, but some other circumstance comes about where things are just automatically resolved. And, you know, like being too eager to fix things, that can be a problem sometimes, you know, trying to sit down and fix everything, you know, it can be a problem. It can overcomplicate things, you know. And it's something I experience a lot, you know, that there's some issue bothering me with someone, but I wait, I try to be patient, and then something else comes and it adjusts that, or something else happens that gives me greater perspective. Like I'm getting upset about some little thing, and then that same person does something very wonderful and gives me this broader perspective. Okay, they have this fault and that fault, but they're also doing these other wonderful things, you know, then let me appreciate that. You know, like for example, we may, just as a very small example, somebody doesn't wash their dishes, you know, but then they're doing something else, which is so wonderful. You know, they can, you know, give $1 million or whatever, you know, or they can make a beautiful cake, you know, maybe there are some things that they're doing, which is, you know, irritating, you know, but they can do something so much bigger also, you know, so having this broader perspective, and also keeping the mentality that we're all students, you know, we're all in a journey, and we have to consider too, and this is very fundamental to this discussion, is this person ready to hear this teaching, number one? Number two, are they ready to hear it from me? We have to consider that. That was a point our Gurudev made, you know, that you have to consider what is your relationship with that person. So, you know, we are all at a particular point of evolution, right? And we may or may not be ready to hear a particular lesson according to the point that we're at. And we shouldn't try to force that on someone, right? If someone's in kindergarten level, why are we going to force on them instruction from grade 3 or grade 4, right? We have to be patient, you know, we have to be patient and think, oh, this person is at this person's still learning how to tie their shoelaces. You know, why am I going to try and teach them algebra, you know, or whatever? You know, I cannot expect too much. You know? And then rather, what is more progressive is to channel that desire to correct, to improve, to channel it in our self-correction and our self-improvement. You know, that's been a way in which I've been able to, you know, deal with these types of frustrations, you know, like, you know, that famous Mahatma Gandhi quote, be the change that you want to see, you know. So these frustrations that we come across, you know, we can direct that towards ourselves. Like, how can I be that better person? You know, how can I grow from this? You know, and if we are, and really, if we are very absorbed in our own self-correction, then we won't have so much time to be bothered by what's failing in others. We'll see, you know, how can I grow? How we'll find that that's an infinite world. You know, how can I grow? How can I improve? You know, really what it all comes down to is trying to understand what is our duty. You know, this is like one of the most fundamental teachings of the Vedas, you know, as a whole. You know, before we go to Krishna consciousness, you know, Vaishnavism, this is just kind of like a basic idea of the Vedas, Bhagavad Gita. Try to live a life of duty, you know, and the whole Varnashrama system, the social religious system of Vedic India, is based on that principle. Just try to live a life of duty. So this is something that can be very helpful to remember in different, you know, as like a regulating principle in our day-to-day lives. Like, what is my duty in this situation? You know, is it my duty to correct this person, or is it not my duty to correct this person? Is it my, because it may, that's another thing. It may be our responsibility. And then we're actually failing. We're actually lacking if we don't say something. That's another issue. If there's something wrong that someone's doing and we're in a position to correct them and we don't, then some of that fault comes to us, you know. So that's another thing. And in the case of Draupadi, you know, when Draupadi is being disrobed, you know, so horrendously, you know, it's mentioned in the Mahabharata that, you know, because remember, Draupadi, she's in this public assembly, and there are so many great elders who are present, and they're quietly sitting there as onlookers, and they're seniors, you know. And, you know, whereas, you know, Dushasan, the aggressor there, he's like an ignorant man. He's a low-class ignorant man. So it's mentioned in Mahabharata that actually more blame is to be put upon those wise and senior persons present who sat quietly and didn't do anything. Because in a sense, if somebody's ignorant, you can't blame them for doing ignorant things. They don't know better. You know? But if somebody knows better and they have the power to if somebody knows better and they have the power to prevent some wrong and they don't, then they're more guilty. You know? So that is another thing, you know. So I find that very helpful, you know, because we cannot rely on our emotions, you know. We have so many samskars, right? We have so many we have so much material conditioning, and we have different mentalities, different ideas, different emotional states, based on our previous lives, our previous karma. We're all like a different bag of so many different things, concocted things. So that's not like our emotional response to a situation. It's not something to rely upon, right? Like the way that our gut response, our gut reaction to a particular situation, it's based on like this pool of random concocted ideas that we've collected over the course of innumerable lifetimes, all based on relative, provincial, temporary ideas. So that's not something to rely upon. No, that's not something to rely upon. So we want to try to live a life that is guided by revealed truth. And that means trying to understand what is our particular duty in a situation. And if we can do that, then we will become free of these, of all these concocted ideas that we have, and emotional issues that we deal with. We'll become free of all those things. This is a bag of stuff, right? Which we're carrying. It's baggage we're carrying from previous lives. And they've all created this particular, they've constructed a particular mentality and way of dealing with the environment. And if we act on the basis of that, we're feeding into it, we're strengthening, we're reinforcing all of that. Right? So is that how we want to live? If we're happy to remain there, then we can continue, no problem. We can react as we're, according to our immediate instincts, our gut reactions. We can act on the basis of that. And all we're doing is reinforcing the particular environment that we've created for ourselves. Because this is the thing, we're actually creating our environment, right? According to our limited, finite way of engaging, reciprocating with the environment, we are creating that. How we are responding to the environment is what we are creating for our future. So if we change that whole process, which will be painful because we're going to have to go against like what we've constructed over so many lifetimes, it will be painful, but it's revolutionary, and we will change our environment. The situation, the environment, the circumstances that face us now is a product of our own previous activity and our own previous way of reciprocating with the environment. So, whether we like it or not, that's the case. So, but if we have the strength of mind and the courage to change the way in which we're responding to the environment, then it will change. And fundamentally, that means not to blame the environment, but to see how we are actually responsible. We are actually responsible. It may be in a way that is beyond our understanding at present, how it is that we are responsible. We must understand it is the case. And as difficult as it may be, it is a rectification, and not a cold rectification, but a loving rectification. That may be something very challenging to person's faith. But we are trying to go beyond the limited view of our finite vision. We're trying to read the environment according to truth that has come from a higher plane, according to revealed truth. We're trying to see and engage with our environment on the basis of that higher vision, that higher calculation. Just like physicists or chemists, or they all engage. They see a finer. Scientists, they see the environment in a different way. If I look at this fan here, I'm just thinking I turn the switch and the fan moves, I get cool air, right? But a physicist will see that in a totally different way and can explain all these things about the velocity and the air and all these things. And, if I have a cup of water, I'm just drinking the water, right? But a chemist will see it completely differently. Oh, this is a combination of this chemical and that chemical and all these things. And then when you drink the water and it's going in your body, all these things are taking place, right? So there's behind everything, there's some finer science, so we are interested in spiritual science. And in order to succeed in that, we need to trust the words of the expert spiritual scientists. What is their version? What is their deeper understanding of things? If you take a toy away from a 3-year-old, that 3-year-old will be in tears, right? But is there any logic behind that? Is there any sense behind that? No, And as the child grows, it will come to understand, oh, that was kind of foolish. First of all, this toy is not very important. Second of all, I can share. So in the same way, we're like that child, right? Things come and disturb us, and we have in our finite world, and we have finite ways of responding to that. But with a deeper and broader vision, we'll see it's not necessary at all. Why is it that that's bothering me? It doesn't need to bother me. I think that's everything that comes to mind at present. Does anyone want to add anything to that? I can also say, another thing I wanted to say, I'm just reviewing the question here again, is, one point that our Gurudev made, Srila Govinda Maharaj, is that we have to practice these things with a mood, I'm referring to these principles of humility, tolerance, and respect. We have to try to follow them with a mood of affection. And he made this interesting comment once, saying that, he said, otherwise, if we're following by the book, right, if we're following by law, then that has its limit. And as Leelam Dori said, one day we'll just explode, right? If we're like in that mood of just gritting our teeth, oh, I'm going to tolerate this, I'm going to tolerate this, then that moment will come and we'll just explode. It will come, and no doubt that's something we've all experienced. Sometimes I give the example of one devotee, who's a very wonderful devotee, by the way, but they were giving class in a particular environment for like 20 years, let's say, long time. And one person in that class was always making some disturbance, when you're, I'm sure Jason knows, he's a teacher, when you have that student who's, always makes some snide comment or just totally doesn't get what you're saying and says something totally off point, And so this was going on year after year after year for the regular Sunday meeting. And then finally, a few years ago, one Sunday, our friend, he just exploded, in the middle of the Sunday lecture and stood up and, nobody listens to me. And I wasn't there, but I heard about it. And then he went storming out and went to the basement, and I was thinking, this is a very good example of this, that, it was like 10, 20 years, tolerating, but finally just explode, and in a very embarrassing way. So our Gurudev made this point that we have to tolerate with affection, with love, with affection, with compassion, and that is unlimited. That is unlimited. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one article where he's discussing these principles, he equates tolerance with compassion. And when I read that, it was revolutionary. It totally changed my conception of tolerance and made it so much easier to practice. This feeling of empathy, compassion. How is it that this person is behaving in this way? What issues are they dealing with? That they're living in this state of ignorance. That is a very sad state to be in. And how is it that they are in that? What suffering have they been through? What awkward circumstances have they experienced that are causing them to behave in this dysfunctional way? So this type of consideration will help us to be to be tolerant from a more genuine place. And as Srila Sridhar says, reality is a thing, drawing upon Einstein's theory of relativity. He says, reality is a thing plus its potential. Reality is not at a standstill. We have to, when we go to consider the value of something, we have to consider all the possibilities that surround it. And so we don't want to be stuck in like, what's this snapshot of here and now, right? This momentary issue or this tiny thing relative, within the whole, it's a very tiny thing. What is this? This is not the end. This is not the end of the story. This isn't the final pic. This isn't the end of the movie, right? This is just this one scene of the movie. And we have choice. What's the narrative here? We have some choice in creating that. What is the narrative going to be? We have some part to play in that, some choice. That's from Einstein, Jason saying. I can't explain properly, but Srila Sridhar, he extrapolates this from Einstein's theory of relativity, that reality is not at a standstill, that we have to consider the possibilities that surround the potential. We have to consider the potential that surrounds anything. You can, in our book, Loving Search for the Lost Servant, he discusses that. Very, very wonderful.
All right, I'm on it. That's a mind blower.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add any thoughts to that discussion?
I will say, if you tune in this Saturday for a Zoom meeting of Srila Guru Maharaj's video series, he actually talks about this.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm. And I will say, I have heard on other occasions from Gurudev, before there can be a correction, there must be affection. So if you're going to correct someone, you must have affection. You must be out of love. You must be coming from a place of love, of affection. And I feel, I've learned from personal experience that, there's certain devotees where I can go and say whatever I want to them because I have love for them. And they know that. They know I'm coming from a place of affection. And then there's other devotees, if they're doing something wrong, I won't say anything because it's not coming from a place of affection, of love. And another point that Gurudev also makes is that if you're seeing that fault in another, try to realize where that fault lies in you. So if you're seeing somebody who has big ego, okay, but how big is my ego? This should be the consideration. You're seeing that fault in another, pray to Nityananda Prabhu that fault won't come to you, that you don't want that fault in your life. So those are a couple things that I've heard Gurudev say.
Very nice. Beautiful, beautiful, Chinmoy Prabhu. That's really nice.
About the question and your answer, I would have answered that in in so much lesser, in such a smaller angle. So I really like how you give your own the common sense, your own feeling, and what the gurus would do and what they, you know, tell us to do. So such a well-rounded answer. I needed to hear that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Gangalila. And another thing to add is perhaps as an antithesis is well, I did touch upon it, you know, knowing when it's our duty to say something. That is important because, okay, a lot of the things that we get bothered by, they're like little day-to-day things, right? Or things to do with our ego. But sometimes there are serious issues, right? And they actually need to be addressed. And especially, you know, within spiritual societies, you know, there's a long history of many weird things happening, you know, because everyone thinks we're meant to be humble and quiet, right? And things can get very strange and very cultish, you know. and I'm sure we've all seen, you know, many examples of that, you know, or some examples or heard, you know, there, of course, there's a spectrum. Some of them we don't even want to think about because they're so horrible. But that, you know, and I like what you said, Ganglila, about using common sense. No, that's having some common sense is important because, you know, another thing here is it's not only about us, right? We have to think about the welfare of others. And that's where, you know, the point about duty comes in too. For the protection of others, the welfare of others, we may need to say something. You know? And also for our own well-being so that we can continue as, you know, healthy, loving members of a spiritual, you know, ideology group, you know, as conceiving of ourselves as property of the Lord, of Guru. We have to take care of ourselves, you know. So, you know, there is a point, you know, there is a line that is drawn, like what's not so important we can try and overlook, and then beyond that, like, no, we have to say something, you know. And it may not be for us to say, you know, it may be that if we say it, it will just exacerbate the situation, but then we can bring it to somebody else, you know. So that is another thing to bear in mind. And another thing is we have to consider what is the capacity of our own faith, you know. And a few weeks ago, a similar discussion came up, and I wanted to mention this, but I forgot. But now I'm remembering, and it's also related. A nice example of this, you know, like, oh, another example comes to mind, like Haridas Thakur, right? Haridas Thakur, who's known as the inaugurator of the chanting of the holy name, the Namacharya, an associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You know, he was extreme in his practice of humility, tolerance. Not practice, but he's living that. And there's that incident, right, when, you know, because he came from a Muslim family, and so he would rub both Hindus and Muslims up the wrong way with his, you know, taking up the Vaishnava Dharma and chanting, you know, the name of Krishna. And so there's this one incident where some Muslim officials, they were beating him, and they'd been ordered to do so by the local Muslim ruler. And it said, and we're told that Haridas Thakur was so compassionate upon these men, that at a certain, because he wasn't being harmed, because he was in such a transcendental state that he wasn't harmed by their beating. And finally, these men were getting worried, like, oh, we're going to get in trouble because we're not doing our job properly. We're not fulfilling the task, and we're going to get in trouble. We're going to get beaten. And so we're told Haridas Thakur was so compassionate that he pretended to be dead. You know? And so then they could feel like, oh, we did our job. And then finally they threw him in the Ganges River. Like, that's Haridas Thakur. But can we imitate that? You know, we can't imitate that. Chinmoy Prabhu, you wanted to say something?
Well, I think the story was that they had to beat him to death. I think that was,
Okay,
yeah,
Yeah,
they had to beat him to death and he wasn't dying.
right, right. That's right. And what was it? It wasn't, it was it whipping, or it was a particular type of, I can't remember. I think it was like
Yeah, it was
whip-
like lashing him through 26 marketplaces with like
That's
horrid
right.
whips. And he actually died. Well, he went into a samadhi state. He didn't just pretend, but he actually died.
Mm.
But a yogic samadhi state, that death, not like, and then he came into the river Ganga and resuscitated, but he was actually dead.
Yeah, I think it's the people who were beating him actually prayed to him, like, please, Haridas Thakur, we will be in trouble. Be merciful to us.
But then another story, the story that I wanted to tell, there was one occasion where one of our Western sannyasis, this is in America, I don't want to mention names, but he was being attacked by the members of another institution. And he did kind of, antagonize them. He set up a preaching center right next to them. And of course, there's no excuse for their behavior. But anyway, they didn't like that. They felt there was some competition, and they actually, made some type of physical attack, beat him to some degree. I don't know the details. But as a result of that, he started carrying a gun around, like for his protection. And then the next time he came to visit India, he reported this to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj was unhappy to hear that. He was unhappy that he'd been attacked, but he also was unhappy with the way that this sannyasi had responded. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj told him, like, the proper Vaishnava way to deal with this, you should give that gun to your aggressors. That was Srila Sridhar Maharaj's take on the situation. That why are you like trying to defend yourself like this? Rather go and hand that, it's like Jesus, right? Turn the other cheek, right? The same type of idea, So that was what Srila Sridhar Maharaj advised him. And Giri Maharaj is completely shocked, like thinking, like, seriously, I have to go and give my gun to these men who want to like kill me? I don't know, for all I know. So then the meeting ended and he went like kind of stumbling down the stairs, his head's reeling with this instruction. And then our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, came after him and he told him, Maharaj, you don't have to follow that instruction. You don't have to follow that instruction. So I found that very helpful, because you see, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is seeing this from the highest plane of faith. Like in his reality, that is the way that you, like Rupa, Sanatan, Haridas Thakur, like this caliber of Vaishnava, this is how they would deal with these situations. And we can also add, because of their deep faith, they're automatically protected also, But then our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he's, Chincha samasta veda nipunam. It's mentioned in our Gurudev's Pranam mantra. He has perfect, he's perfectly has perfect understanding of both sides, the divine side and also the more relative human worldly side. And our Gurudev's like recognizing this high, and he's not ready for this high instruction. This is too high for him. And it will just be problematic for him, and it may even disturb his faith in the end, because he's not ready for that. So it's that's another thing to consider. What is our level of faith? Like, how much can we tolerate? How much can we endure? What are we ready for? That's another thing to consider. Radhana Rupini, did you put your hand up?
Actually, I was thinking, when you were speaking, how really if there's something that is being said about us, then we should just tolerate it, and not defend ourselves. That's what I was taught. That when you defend, you don't defend yourself. You could defend someone else, but don't defend yourself. Let it go. You can walk away, which is always the best thing to do. Walk away. Just excuse me and walk away. or keep a distance and pay your obeisances from a distance is another thing I've been told. But yeah, that, and also I was thinking about that gut reaction you were talking about. And you know, it's exactly that. It's a reaction.
Mhm.
You know, reaction is always rawr, you know, reaction, you know, when we should respond in a calm manner, you know. And I had an experience once where there was this very, 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 very young in all manners of a devotee, and it seems like she was just doing everything. She needed a lot of instruction. Just even like in making garlands, don't make it on the bare floor. You have to put something on the floor before you put the garland, or don't put your book on the bare floor. Just simple things like that. And somebody had told me, please instruct her and tell her how to do things. And I tried, but she was a very strong person and she couldn't hear it from me, because she would always like get upset at me more or get angry at me. So then I went to the person that told me to instruct her and I said, you know, I think I'm just not the right person for this job. You know, maybe somebody else can do it because it's not doing good. So, you know, it's when we see things like you said that might not be correct, it's also good to go to someone else that you think that could do the job better than you.
Mhm.
You know, it's how things are being said. I live on a set of islands here, and I heard from a distance that they're one of the islands. There was a sannyasi that went there and had a topic he wanted to speak to the local resident Vaishnavas there. And I heard that they all went in an uproar, anger. There was anger, and he's never invited back. And then another sannyasi 3 months or so later had the same message, but delivered it in a different manner, that they all heard it and they all did what they're supposed to, and he was always invited back. So yeah, it is also in the manner that we deliver. But I always heard about that wait and see is the best. But anyway, we should be harder on ourselves and softer on others. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that in Rupini. Yes, I'm a firm believer of that you can get away with saying pretty much anything. It's all about how you say it. And trying to keep things light can help, you know, make a joke out of it, you know, or address it sometimes addressing it in a kind of like a group format. But you have to be careful with that, because you don't want people to feel like you're targeting them, you know, that can happen, you know. Yeah, you have to be a little smart. And I like what you said too about see, this is the test. Like, is it about our ego, or is it really coming out of the desire, as Chinmoy said, to affectionately help someone? Like, this is a test in that regard. Like, can we pass it on to somebody else? Like having that selflessness. Oh, I'm not the right person to say it, but somebody else can. Because sometimes what can happen is our ego gets involved, and it becomes more about our ego in the end than what the issue is actually, you know, like they're not listening to me, or it can become more about that than what the original issue was. So to have that selflessness is, that's what we want to strive for too, recognizing that our own limitations, right? And seeing that, and really feeling that mood. Oh, I really want to help this person grow. It's not about me, you know, but I want them to become a more whole and more beautiful Vaishnava spiritual soul.
But can I say one thing, Didi? But at the same time, if we see abuse, if we hear of abuse or see abuse being done to another Vaishnava, or if we are getting really bad abuse, it has to be brought to the surface. It's a whole different ballgame.
Well, yes, I mean, I think we just addressed that now. You know, there is a line, right? There's what's below we can overlook, and above we have to address. Yes, of course, of course. And a good dose of common sense is helpful there. Rasaraj Prabhu, I'd love to hear some thoughts from you.
Well, actually, humility and tolerance have to be addressed according to the situation. I understand that sometimes when it's a materialistic person, and is attacking us or somebody else, we don't should show so much humility and tolerance. Even Srila Guru Maharaj said that humility and tolerance is between devotees, but with karmis and people, they are like a little crazy that they don't know what to do. We have to be careful with them. So the tolerance had to be adjusted. And I remember also that was in South America in the 1970s. There was a temple and some people from outside, they wanted to attack the temple. And the devotees took some weapons and they were defending themselves. And Srila Guru Maharaj heard about that. And he said that the devotees are doing right. Because these people are attacking the temple, the deities, and all the devotees inside, they had to defend themselves. So everything that is about humility and tolerance had to be adjusted according to the situation. But mostly, humility and tolerance is to other devotees. But an animal, like a wild animal or a person is materialistic, we have to do it in a different way. That's why you understand.
Yes, I mean, yes, definitely, of course, you know, humility has to be, I mean, we want to show respect to everyone, you know, whether they are Vaishnava, non-Vaishnava, whether they're animal or human, you know, we want to give respect to everyone. But if they are creating disturbance, if someone is displaying disturbing characteristics, then we cannot tolerate that, you know. And there's also that case of you mentioned a case in South America. There was a similar incident in Mayapur where some persons attacked the temple, and some of the devotees, they brought some guns out to defend themselves. I don't think they used them, but they came out to defend themselves. And some of the local people, then they criticized the devotees, saying, "Oh, where's the humility here? Where's the tolerance?" And Srila Sridhar said, "No, they're doing it to protect, you know, to protect the deity, to protect the devotees. Then it is the correct response, you know." Or as, you know, Gurudev said simply, if someone is beating my father, then I'm not going to tolerate that, right? I must protect, you know, that is my duty. So yes, definitely, absolutely, we must adjust according to time, place, and circumstance. We have to have a living understanding of these things, right? Of what humility is, you know? So yes, very nice. And anyone else want to add any final words before we end the discussion for today?
I have a note on the turning the other cheek thing.
Yes.
Because I was already thinking that when you said it. Because the thing that a lot of people miss about that is in the Greco-Roman world, well, I mean, this would be familiar to you guys, you only ever touched other people with your right hand. You didn't use your left hand.
Wait, hang on. I mean, like in the Indian culture, that's quite a big thing. I didn't know that was in what culture did you say?
The Greco-Roman culture.
Okay, interesting.
So we're in, you know, we're in the Roman Empire.
When you say Greco, you mean Greek?
Greek and Roman, because they sort of blend, they it's hard to differentiate the two.
Mm.
So yeah. And so, you know, Jesus was preaching in a society where everybody knew you just only used your right hand to touch other people. And also where they understood that a backhanded slap was what a superior gave to an inferior. And an open palm slap was what you would give to an equal. So if someone comes up and they whack you on one cheek, backhanded, and you turn the other cheek, you're saying, you can hurt me as much as you want, but you have to be honest with yourself about the fact that I am a human being and I am worth the same amount as you. So like when you've got that situation where you have spiritual communities in competition and one of them is committing the error of using violence, and you take the gun and you go to them and you say, look, I understand that I'm in your way and you want me out of your way. And, you know, beating me you thought might do it, but it's going to take something more permanent. So here, and you hand them the gun. Anybody with any amount of true faith is going to understand that that is their call for self-evaluation. So it's not just a matter of being humble. It's a matter of finding strength in your humility, of allowing God to work in the other person through your submission, if that makes sense.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful, very nice. Oh. Anyone else have any final words before we close for today? Okay, well, been a very wonderful meeting as always. Thank you all so much for your association and look forward to next time. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, all the assembled devotees, sincere seekers ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanande.